I never thought that turning 70 would end with me crying behind a locked door in my own house. I never thought the son I raised would laugh at me like I was nothing but a bank account with a weak spine. But I heard it, every word. And something inside me cracked so deep, I swear I could feel my mother's voice whisper, "Stand up, Dorothy." I had just taken the cupcakes out of the oven. I remember because the kitchen still smelled like vanilla and smoke when I walked down the hallway, carrying that tray like a peace offering. My hands ached, but I was smiling. I'd even worn the blue blouse Serena once said made me look less tired. I thought maybe, just maybe, they'd sing. Maybe Ryan would hug me and say thank you. Maybe I mattered more than my wallet. Then I heard his voice from the kitchen. Loud, carefree, like he had nothing to hide. "She's just a walking ATM, one guilt trip, and she hands over her savings like magic." The tray started shaking in my hands. My feet didn't move, but the world did. Tilted sideways, like the house was leaning away from me. Serena laughed. "She paid off your debt, paid for this house, paid for our honeymoon. Now she can pay for her own nursing home." I didn't breathe. I couldn't. My legs remembered how to move before the rest of me did. I backed up, slow and quiet, like I was leaving the scene of a crime. Like if I made too much noise, they'd know I'd heard. The cupcakes tipped slightly as I pushed my bedroom door closed with my foot and locked it behind me. I stood there, still holding the tray, watching the frosting slide where my hands were shaking. That was my son. That was my daughter-in-law. In the kitchen I bought, inside the house I paid for, joking about where to throw me next, like I was trash they'd been too polite to bag up. And just like that, every apology Ryan had ever given me, every "I'm sorry, Mom" that came with a crooked smile and empty bank account, meant nothing. I'd emptied my retirement savings 3 weeks ago to cover his $30,000 gambling debt, 3 decades of quiet penny pinching, gone in a single wire transfer. He cried when he asked, said he needed a second chance, that Serena would leave him if he didn't fix it. And I believed him. Because love makes fools of mothers. But fools can wake up. I slid the tray onto my dresser and sat on the edge of the bed. I didn't cry. Not at first. I just stared at the locked door, like maybe the wood could hold all the pain back. But the silence hurt worse, like the house was mocking me for staying so long. And then, somewhere between the second and third cupcake, the tears started. Slow, heavy, like the kind you cry when something you built for decades just breaks. I was the fool who thought love would be enough, that if I gave and gave and gave, they'd see me, respect me, want me, not just my checkbook. But that moment, alone in my room, I knew. They didn't love me, they loved my money. And when it was gone, they'd throw me away too. So I made myself a promise. I wouldn't say a word. Not yet. But I'd never let them laugh at me again. 3 weeks earlier, I drained the last of my retirement savings, with shaking hands. The bank teller didn't ask questions, just handed me a receipt that looked more like a death certificate. $30,000. Every cent I had scraped together since my husband passed, gone in a single blink for a son who'd made a mess of his life and come running home with tears and promises. Ryan cried on my porch that night. I remember the way he held his head in his hands, his voice raw. "I messed up, Mom. I didn't know who else to ask. Serena's gonna leave me. I swear this is the last time. I'll fix it." I still see that moment when I close my eyes. Him, sitting on the porch steps like he was 5 again and scraped his knee, and I was the only thing in the world that could make it better. So I said yes. I told myself it wasn't foolish, that this was what mothers did, that I was saving him. I told myself Serena would be grateful too, that maybe things would feel more like family around here once the weight of his debt was lifted. I even smiled when I handed him the check. That same week, I cooked dinner every night. I cleaned Serena's hair out of the shower drain and folded their laundry without being asked. I thought, this is temporary. Things will get better now. They never did. They started going out more. Stress relief, Serena called it. Mani-pedis and wine tastings and weekend trips to de-stress after all that drama. I stayed home with their dog and watered the plants. This house, my house, is in a quiet suburb just outside of Richmond. I bought it after my husband died. It's the only place that's ever felt like mine. He left me a small insurance policy, not much, but enough to buy this home in full with a little to live on. It's where I watched the azaleas bloom every spring, where I taught Ryan how to ride a bike, where I still talk to my late husband sometimes, just out loud when no one's around. It's a house full of ghosts and gratitude. But it hasn't felt like mine for a while. Not since Ryan and Serena moved in, just until they got back on their feet. That was almost 2 years ago. 2 years of Serena's scented candles giving me headaches. 2 years of Ryan turning the guest room into his home office, and slowly, without ever asking, taking over every inch of this place. They never paid rent. I never asked. I told myself I was helping them. I told myself they'd do the same for me if the roles were reversed. But something in my gut started twisting the week after the debt was paid. Ryan stopped saying thank you. Serena stopped pretending to be polite. She started coming home with throw pillows and saying things like, "This house has so much potential once we redo the floors." She'd glance at me when she said it, like I was a crack in the tile that needed covering. They brought home catalogs, started talking about open concept kitchens. Serena once even pointed to my bedroom and said, "That would make such a perfect nursery someday." She said it with her hand on her stomach. I stared at her for a long moment and whispered, "Are you pregnant?" She laughed. "God, no. Not yet. But soon. Maybe. We're just dreaming right now." Dreaming. They were dreaming about my house like it was already theirs. I kept telling myself I was imagining things, that no one could be so bold, that surely they knew this home was mine, that I wasn't just a spare piece of furniture that came with it. But every time Serena referred to the kitchen as our future bar area, that voice in my head got louder. They weren't planning to leave. They were planning to take over, and I'd already given them everything. By the end of that week, I stopped sitting in the living room. It wasn't mine anymore. Not really. That space, the one I'd painted buttercream yellow after my husband passed because it made the mornings feel softer, had turned into Serena's command center. Throw blankets in her favorite blush tones. A framed Live, Laugh, Love sign above the fireplace I used to light during snowstorms. A new rug. I wasn't allowed to vacuum because it's imported wool, Dorothy. You can't just run over it with a Walmart special. I used to watch the news in there every morning with my coffee. Now Serena played her motivational podcasts on speaker while doing yoga poses right where my husband's recliner used to be. That recliner is in the garage now, under a dusty tarp. Most days I stayed in the kitchen or my room. That's where they seemed to tolerate me best. Every morning, I'd wake up before sunrise to make coffee. Black for me, oat milk for Serena with a sprinkle of cinnamon. I'd set out bowls for their cereal, wipe down the counters they never bothered to clean the night before, and feed the dog because, despite her insisting it was her emotional support animal, she never remembered to buy food. It wasn't asked of me. It was expected. One afternoon, Serena walked in while I was folding the towels. "You don't have to do all that, Dorothy," she said, not kindly. "We're not your guests anymore. We're family." But the way she said family, that tone, made it sound like a warning. Not long after, I heard her on the phone with a friend, laughing as she said, "It's like having a live-in maid. I don't even know how I lived without her folding my underwear." And Ryan stopped seeing me. He didn't yell, didn't curse. He just vanished from view. I was a fixture in the house, like a lamp or a dish rack, something convenient. He started coming home late, never with explanations. Sometimes I'd ask if he was okay, and he'd just grunt, "I'm fine, Mom," like I'd asked something shameful. But the worst part? The part that hurt more than anything. I kept doing it. I kept folding their towels, kept cooking dinner, kept sweeping the floors and trimming the hedges, and asking if Serena needed anything from the store. Because I didn't know how to stop. I didn't know how to take up space anymore. I'd built my whole life around being needed, around being the helper, the fixer. The quiet one who held everything together, while everyone else tore things apart. When my husband died, I kept moving so I wouldn't feel the ache. When Ryan fell apart, I gave him everything so I wouldn't feel useless. But now, I was useful. That was all. Not respected. Not cherished. Just convenient. Serena began dropping hints about redecorating more aggressively. "We're thinking about converting the dining room into a podcast studio," she said one evening, smiling too sweetly. "Don't you think it's time this place evolved a little?" I asked her, "What do you mean we're thinking?" She laughed. "Oh, nothing serious yet, but, once things are more permanent. Permanent." That word stayed in my mouth like ash. The next morning, she was showing Ryan color swatches for the guest room walls, my room, and said, "I'm picturing soft neutrals, calming, so we can really claim the space." She didn't know I was listening, but I was. And suddenly I wasn't folding towels anymore. I was counting days. Because if they thought this house belonged to them now, then it was time they remembered who really held the deed. The only person who still called me Dot was Gloria. She showed up on a Tuesday afternoon with a basket of muffins and no warning, like always. Her lipstick was too red, her curls too stubborn for 72, and she walked in like she owned the place, because she used to. Not this house, but me, my life. Back when we shared a locker in high school and thought love was supposed to feel like waiting by the phone. She plopped herself on my kitchen stool and said, "This place still smells like cinnamon and regret." I smiled. A real one. "It's cinnamon and Serena's expensive diffuser." Gloria snorted. "Same thing." We sat for an hour. She caught me up on her latest internet boyfriend. This one was a retired firefighter who reads nonfiction and doesn't own a boat, which is progress. I laughed, and for the first time in months, I felt my chest open a little, like I was more than just the shadow floating through Serena's spotless house. Eventually, she asked the question, "So, Dot, is the house still in your name?" I blinked. "What?" She leaned back, arms crossed. "The deed. The property. You didn't sign anything over, right?" I laughed, too quickly. "No, I'm not that old. It's still mine." "Why?" She looked me dead in the eye. "Then don't move out." I flinched. She'd said it so plainly, like she already knew the plan. Like she could see the suitcase under my bed I hadn't packed yet. Like she'd been listening to the same whispers I had. I tried to sound casual. "I never said I was." She didn't buy it. Gloria never did. "You think I don't hear it, Dot? The way you talk about her. About him. Like you're some guest overstaying your welcome in the house you bought with your husband's life insurance. You didn't move in with them. They moved in with you." I bit the inside of my cheek. She leaned in. "If the deed's still in your name, you can evict them. Kick them out. You're not helpless. You're not done." The word evict felt sharp, harsh, wrong. My son lived here. My son. But so did her words. "You're not done." I hadn't told anyone about the night I overheard them laughing. I hadn't told anyone how my hands trembled when I saw Serena measuring the living room wall and saying, "It's the perfect spot for the floating shelves." I hadn't told anyone because I felt foolish, embarrassed, like I'd built a cage out of kindness and handed them the key. Gloria saw through it, saw me. She softened her voice. "I know you, Dot. You raised a whole child through grief and gray hair. You scrubbed floors and buried your husband and never asked for anything. But love without respect? That's just a leash." Something broke in my throat then. I looked down at my mug. Cold tea, cold house, cold everything. She stood and kissed my cheek. "Think about it. I'll keep a space in my garage if you need to store anything." I nodded. I didn't speak, but a spark caught in my chest. Not anger. Not yet. Just a flicker. I still owned this house. And if that was true, then maybe, just maybe, I wasn't the one who needed to leave. From that day on, I smiled more. Not because I forgave them, but because I knew something they didn't. I started playing the part. The tired old woman ready to pack it in, fade quietly into a nursing home. I let Serena believe she'd won. "Oh, you're right," I told her one morning, as she talked about moving the piano. This house really should belong to younger people now. She looked pleased. Too pleased. I mean, we've been thinking of expanding the kitchen, maybe even knocking down that pantry wall. You won't believe what we've been dreaming up. I kept my face blank, nodding. Of course. You deserve your dream home. That night, I pulled my old purse out of the closet and took the bus downtown. Gloria had already made the call. Her cousin's boy, young, smart, and mean in all the right ways, was waiting for me in a tucked-away office that smelled like old carpet and certainty. His name was Julian. He wore a suit that didn't quite fit, and a look that told me he'd helped tougher women than me take back what was theirs. "I'm not trying to ruin them," I said quietly, as I handed over my ID and pulled out the key to my safe deposit box. "I just want my life back." He nodded once. "Then we'll start with the deed." The next morning, I stood in front of the bank vault, alone, my hands sweating as I turned the key. Inside was the folder I hadn't touched in nearly 5 years. Original property title, insurance records, my will, old but still valid, all in my name. Untouched, untainted. When I handed them to Julian, I felt something shift in my ribs, like breathing after being held underwater. We talked quietly in his office for over an hour. He asked about Ryan, about Serena, about how long they'd lived with me, if they paid rent, if I had anything in writing. I didn't. Of course I didn't. Everything I gave with trust. Julian's mouth pulled tight when I said that. "People like that count on it," he said. "They count on your love making you blind." I nodded, my throat burning. I wasn't blind. I just wanted it to be different. He didn't argue. By the time I left the office, the first eviction documents were drafted and waiting for my review. All that was left was timing. So I made myself small again. Back home, I started moving a few boxes. Slowly. Just enough for them to notice. "I'll be gone before your return," I told Ryan as he packed for their second honeymoon. "You don't have to worry about a thing." He barely looked up from his phone. "Just make sure you leave the keys." And that was it. No hug, no thank you, not even a glance. He didn't ask where I was going. He didn't care. I walked back to my room that night, and something in me clicked. They weren't hiding their intentions anymore. And I wasn't hiding mine either. I took long walks that week. Early morning ones, before Serena's smoothie blender ruined the silence, before Ryan's heavy steps came down the stairs like I owed him a smile. The air was still cool. The sidewalks wet with dew, and the world, for just a while, felt like it still had room for someone like me. I walked through the park near the library. The same park where I used to push Ryan on the swing when he was little. He'd wear his red sneakers and shout, "Higher, Mama! Higher!" And I'd pretend my arms were strong enough to send him to the sky. Now I was the one looking up, wondering if I'd imagined it all. I found a bench near the pond and sat. Ducks floated by, calm and ignorant. I dug my hands into my coat pockets and stared at nothing. He used to hold my hand when I got chemo. Ryan. He was 28 then, fresh out of college, just starting to build his life. When I got sick, he was the one who said, "You'll be fine, Mom. I'll take care of everything." And for a while, I believed him. He sat beside me through every treatment, every sleepless night. He rubbed my back when the nausea hit, and heated soup that always went cold before I could eat it. He looked scared, but he showed up. Back then, I thought it meant something. I thought, this is love. This is the boy I raised. But now, I didn't know. Was it love, or was it guilt? Was it care, or was it obligation? Was I just someone he had to babysit until I could get back on my feet and serve again? It's a cruel thing, to wonder if the best memories of your life were lies. I used to think love had to be real if it hurt this much when it broke. But maybe I was wrong. Maybe it just means you held on too long. I watched a woman in the park kneel down beside a toddler, wiping his nose while he cried over a dropped cracker. She didn't sigh. She didn't yell. She just kissed the top of his head and said, "Let's find you another one." That's what it was like raising Ryan. Constant crumbs and tiny needs. Fixing, soothing, Folding 100 hurts a day like laundry. And now that I was old, tired, he wanted me out of sight. Not dead. Not exactly. Just elsewhere. Somewhere he wouldn't have to say no to my face. Somewhere Serena wouldn't have to trip over my orthopedic slippers or my grief. I'd become background noise. The quiet hum of the dishwasher. The folded laundry they never noticed. The groceries that just appeared. I wasn't a person anymore. I was a service. And when the service stopped being convenient, they made plans to cancel it. Back at home, I started taping up a few more boxes, just for show. I labeled them with vague words, photos, sewing, misc, and stacked them by the garage door where Serena would see them. I made sure she saw. That night, she said sweetly, "You're really leaving everything behind?" I smiled. "I've got what I need." And I did. I had the deed. I had the lawyer. I had a childhood friend with a garage and a memory long enough to remind me who I used to be. I just didn't have a son anymore. Not really. That boy on the swing, the one who begged me to push higher, I think he disappeared somewhere between the poker tables and Serena's champagne brunches. What's left is a man who laughs about me behind walls I paid for. But I wasn't going to cry for him anymore. No, I'd already buried the man I loved once. I wouldn't bury myself for the boy I raised. The day they left for their vacation, I stood in the driveway and waved. It was Serena's idea to go to Belize. "We deserve a reset," she'd told Ryan, loud enough for me to hear, "after all the stress with your mom's situation." My situation. That's what they were calling it now. Me. Serena wore a white sundress that looked like a wedding cake. Ryan had on the linen shirt I gave him for his birthday last year, the tag still barely cut. They didn't hug me. Didn't say thank you, just shouted last-minute instructions like I was the help. "Don't forget to water the plants in the sunroom," Serena called as she adjusted her sunglasses. "Trash pickups Friday morning," Ryan added, tossing his bag in the trunk. I smiled through it. "Don't worry," I said. "I'll be gone before you get back." Ryan grinned, like that was the best news he'd heard all week. "Just make sure you leave the keys on the hook," he said, already sliding into the passenger seat. "We'll probably have contractors come by next week to look at the master bath." The master bath. I closed the door after they drove off, and for a moment, I stood there in the silence of my own house. Then I locked it. Every deadbolt, every window, every sliding door that Serena always left cracked open. I made tea and watched the sun fall through the kitchen blinds. The air was different now. Still, a little sacred, like the house was waiting with me. Later that night, I walked across the street to Gloria's. We moved a few boxes into her garage, just enough to make it look like I was packing up my life. She offered me dinner, but I wasn't hungry. I felt light, nervous, wired with something that wasn't fear. I went back home and stood in the hallway. Serena had already started measuring the walls outside my bedroom. I saw the pencil marks. She'd written bar shelves in small, tidy letters near the thermostat. I touched the spot gently with my palm. Then I walked into my room and started folding the good sheets. Not for them. For me. I didn't know exactly where I'd go after. Maybe I'd stay at Gloria's for a bit. Maybe I'd take that train up to Asheville like I used to dream about, back when I thought I'd be an artist one day instead of a mother with a ledger. But I knew one thing for certain. They weren't going to decide it for me. That night, I sat at the kitchen table with the lights off. Just me and the hum of the fridge. I could still hear Ryan's voice from that day in the kitchen. The one that changed everything. "She's just a walking ATM." I whispered the words out loud to the dark. Then I said, "Not anymore." And I meant it. In the morning, I would change the locks. I would post the eviction notice I'd folded so carefully and tucked behind the sugar jar. I would call Julian to confirm the legal filings had gone through. And then I would take back every square inch of this house. Not out of spite. Not even for revenge. But because quiet doesn't mean weak. Because being patient isn't the same as being passive. And because this house still smelled like me. And they never even noticed. They'd been gone 2 days when I heard it. I wasn't even trying to listen. I'd gone upstairs to drop off some towels and noticed Ryan's office door slightly ajar. The blue light from his monitor spilled out into the hallway, casting strange shadows. I leaned in, not out of suspicion, but to turn off the desk lamp he always forgot. That's when I heard Serena's voice. Not loud, not dramatic, just casual, clear, and cruel. She must have forgotten to close her laptop or mute the call. The Bluetooth speaker on his shelf, still connected, filled the room with her voice like she was right there. She's so gullible. It's a miracle she even had a kid. I froze. For a second, I thought maybe I'd misheard. But then came the laugh, Serena's, followed by another voice, light, syrupy, probably one of her Pilates friends. Then, she thinks we'll let her stay after the reno. She's practically packed already. Give it a week, and we'll be sipping mimosas in her old sewing room. That was the moment. The line that finally drew blood from whatever was left of my hope. I didn't make a sound. Didn't touch the lamp. Just backed away. Slowly, careful not to step on the creaky floorboard near the hallway table. I made it down to the basement without even knowing I was going there. And then I sat, on the edge of the cold cement steps, listening to the silence press in. Basement quiet. Dream quiet. I don't know how long I was down there. Long enough for the air to turn damp in my lungs. Long enough for my tea to cool untouched on the counter upstairs. I stared into the dark. The kind of quiet that only shows up in basements and bad dreams. I think I sat there for an hour, maybe longer. Long enough for my legs to stiffen and my tea to go cold upstairs. And then I said it. Out loud. Alone. No more. Not a whisper, not a plea. A sentence. A decision. It echoed off the walls. I stood up and flipped on the light. The boxes they'd never helped me carry. The furnace I'd paid to replace last winter. The water heater, Serena said, made the house feel poor. Every single thing in that basement was mine. Proof of years, of sweat, of sacrifice. Of a woman who never asked for much but gave more than anyone noticed. I ran my fingers along the dusty shelf where I'd stored the Christmas lights, and something steadied in my spine. They thought I was leaving because I was weak. But the truth? I'd been waiting. Building. Quiet strength doesn't come in declarations. It comes in stillness, in planning, in patience that looks like surrender, until it isn't. That night I moved differently. Not slow, not hesitant. I took the spare key from the junk drawer, slipped it into a plain white envelope, and wrote, "For the locksmith." Tuesday, 9 a.m., I placed it beside my purse and checked the list Julian had emailed. Change locks, checkmark post, legal notice. Checkmark, forward mail. Checkmark, install security cameras. Checkmark, prepare welcome home gift. Checkmark, I even added one. Bake a cake, not out of kindness but for punctuation. The final act. Then I went into my room and pulled out the property title. I'd printed 2 copies, just like Julian said. One would go above the fireplace. The other, well, that would be ready for when Ryan raised his voice and said, "You can't do this." Because yes, I could. And I would. I slept like the dead that night. No tossing, no dreams. Just a flat, clean quiet. The kind that only comes when you finally stop making excuses for people who never thought twice about hurting you. When I woke up, I poured myself a cup of coffee, toasted a bagel, and listened to the house breathe. There was no rush, no chaos, just me, standing in the kitchen I bought, drinking coffee from the mug they always left in the dishwasher. And I smiled, because by the time they came home, it would be too late. They'd find out the hard way. Tuesday morning came with a quiet fog, the kind that clings to everything like a secret. I opened the door before the locksmith even knocked. He was young, early 30s, polite, no small talk. Just nodded when I handed him the envelope and said, "All of them." It took less than 2 hours. Front door, back door, garage. Even the little window lock Serena always left unlatched, so the house could breathe. I watched him twist the final bolt into place, feeling something shift in my chest. Not relief. Not yet. But the beginning of it. I offered him coffee. He said no, thanked me, and drove off without asking why a 70-year-old woman was changing every lock on a sunny Tuesday. After he left, I posted the eviction notice. Right there on the front door. Legal. Cold. Clear. Notice to vacate. Non-paying occupants. Effective immediately upon return. I taped it right over Serena's floral wreath. Her summer chic touch. I didn't bother taking it down. I wanted her to see it underneath. I wanted her to see that I hadn't removed her. I'd simply outlived her claim. Then I called Julian. Told him it was done. He said the paperwork had been filed with the county, just in case they tried to push back. You're the legal owner, he said. You don't have to explain a damn thing. I liked the way that sounded. Legal owner. After lunch, Gloria came by. She brought lemon bars and a vacuum her daughter didn't want anymore. We sat at the kitchen table while the new security system guy installed motion sensors and set up cameras at each entrance. She looked around and said, "It's funny. You look like yourself again." I tilted my head. "What do you mean?" She smiled. "Your back's straighter. You're breathing different. Like you remember. You're not someone they're allowed to talk over anymore." I didn't know how to respond to that. So I just reached across the table and squeezed her hand. By sundown, the house was still. I walked through every room. The guest room. Serena's perfume still hung in the air, sickly and sweet. I opened a window. The living room. Ryan's ugly gray gaming chair still sat in the corner like a wound. I unplugged it and shoved it into the hall. The hallway closet still held coats that weren't mine, but I didn't touch them yet. That part could wait. Instead, I walked into my bedroom, opened the closet, and pulled out the red mat I'd chosen from Michael's last week. I laid it carefully on the mantel and centered the framed title deed on top. Dorothy Mae Jensen, sole owner. My name looked stronger in print than I remembered. I stood back and stared at it, arms crossed. This house belonged to me. Always had. They just forgot. Or maybe they never really believed it. They thought love made it theirs. That debt made it theirs. That kindness was just a transfer of ownership, in softer terms. They were wrong. I turned on the porch light as the sky darkened. The eviction notice fluttered slightly in the breeze. And inside, behind newly locked doors, I baked a lemon cake, Ryan's favorite. I found the recipe card he wrote when he was 16, back when he used to bake for me on Mother's Day. I made it just like he liked it. Extra frosting, candied peel on top. I even lit a candle and placed it beside the cake. Then I angled my phone toward the door, set it to record, and sat down at the table. Not to wait, to watch. Because when they came back, they'd expect welcome. But they were getting closure. The next morning, I rolled up my sleeves and got to work. It wasn't revenge. It was reclamation. Every drawer, every shelf, every closet that didn't belong to me. I cleared it. Quietly. Efficiently. No malice. Just a woman taking her house back one sweater at a time. Gloria came by with storage bins and gloves. "You sure you don't want movers?" she asked, already lifting Serena's crystal vases off the windowsill like they were made of plastic. "No," I said. "I want to do it myself." Because every item I packed was a memory I didn't want. Serena's makeup scattered across my bathroom counter? Gone. Ryan's tangled cords and half-used cologne bottles in the guest room? Boxed. The his and hers towels I never bought but somehow ended up using? Folded and taped shut. I found a stack of real estate brochures in their nightstand drawer. Circled listings. High-rises. Lofts with walk-in closets and downtown views. One of them had "perfect flip," scribbled in Serena's handwriting. They'd been planning to sell it. My house. I paused, just for a second, staring at that word, flip. Like it was just property. A number. A profit margin. Not the house where I cried myself to sleep after my husband died. Where I buried my grief in the garden and grew tomatoes instead. Where I made hot soup for a boy with a fever. Where I stitched curtains to keep the cold out. where I held my own damn hand when chemo made my fingers too weak to hold anything else. They called it a flip. I sealed the box without a sound. By noon, I'd cleared out both of their closets and stacked every labeled box in the garage. Neatly, respectfully. I didn't break anything. I didn't write notes. I didn't leave angry little messages hidden in coat pockets. But I did forward their mail. I'd already set up a temporary address at my sister's place out in Norfolk, just enough to redirect the nonsense, the shopping subscriptions, the credit card offers. I even included a note on the USPS form that said, "Please do not return to sender. Let them wonder." After that, I called a cleaner. A professional woman, retired Navy, sharp eyes, no questions. She deep cleaned the carpets, wiped down the baseboards, and when she opened the fridge and saw 3 bottles of Serena's detox juices, she turned to me and asked, "Trash?" "Absolutely." She didn't smile, just nodded and tossed them out like they weighed nothing. That's what it felt like. Removing them, weightlifting, breath returning. It was the first time in over 2 years the house didn't feel tense. I could hear the floorboards creak again. I could smell my own coffee without it competing with essential oils or lavender sprays. At 3 p.m., I sat in the guest room, my room again, and stared at the empty walls. No more calendar reminders about Serena's IVF consultations. No more reminders of Ryan asking if I'd watched the dog while they took a break at the beach. Just silence. And light. And a clean bed. That night, Gloria brought over her cousin's toolbox and helped me hang the security camera by the front door. We laughed over pizza. Talked about our old coworkers. How none of us planned for retirement. But somehow, we always found a way. "I've never seen you like this," she said, wiping her hands. "You're lighter," I nodded. "I'm alone now." She raised an eyebrow. "You say that like it's a bad thing." "It's not," I said. "It's just honest." Because it was. Being alone wasn't the worst thing that ever happened to me. Losing myself was. And now, box by box, lock by lock, I was taking her back. I was ready for them to come home. But this time, I wouldn't be the one answering the door. I'd be the one standing behind it. Gloria dropped by Sunday afternoon with a tote bag full of art supplies and a bottle of wine she swore was too nice to drink alone. We sat on the porch and watched the street go quiet. "You know," she said, sipping from her glass, "I used to think retirement was supposed to feel like sitting still." "And?" I asked. She shrugged. "Now I think it's about finally moving at your own damn speed." I laughed. "Then I've been retired for exactly 3 days." "Cheers to that," she said, clinking her glass to mine. That night, I laid in bed and let the silence wash over me. No footsteps stomping through the hallway. No reality shows echoing from the living room. No shallow laughs. No cold glances. Just my heartbeat, steady, present. For the first time in years, I didn't feel like someone's burden or someone's servant. I felt like Dorothy Jensen. Woman, widow, survivor, painter, maybe, and homeowner, still. Let him come back. Let him try to play shocked. Wednesday morning, I bought a red picture frame. Big, bold, the kind of red Serena would have called tacky, and Ryan would have called too loud. It matched nothing in the house, and that was the point. I slid the title deed into it. Centered, crisp. My full name at the top, Dorothy Mae Jensen. Black ink on white paper, sharp as a knife. It looked like a certificate of survival. Then I hung it above the fireplace, right where Serena once said she'd hang a gallery wall of his and hers portraits, something Pinteresty and staged. Now it held one frame, one name, one truth. This is mine. I stepped back, adjusted it until it was perfectly level, and let out a breath I didn't know I'd been holding for 2 years. Then I went to the kitchen. The cake took hours, not because I had to, but because I wanted it to be perfect. Ryan's favorite, lemon, extra moist, with thick icing and a little sugar-dusted edge. I even shaped a few lemon peels into roses the way I used to when he was a boy, and birthdays still meant something other than last-minute takeout and stiff hugs. But this wasn't a celebration, it was punctuation. I placed the cake in the center of the dining table, exactly where they'd see it first. I even lit a single candle on top. 1. Not for age, not for sentiment, but for ending, for closure. Then I walked to the front door, lifted my phone, and set the camera to record. I angled it just right, capturing the foyer, the table, the cake, and the framed title above the mantel. The full picture, the real story, no editing, no begging, just truth. Let them come home to it. Let them see everything they thought they were getting, wrapped in sweetness and lit like a shrine, only to find it no longer belongs to them. I rehearsed what I'd say, not because I needed courage, but because I needed clarity, because the time for crying had passed, and I wasn't going to raise my voice. I wasn't going to plead. I'd say it once, and they'd feel it for the rest of their lives. After that, I dusted off the cushions, straightened the chairs, and swept the entryway. I wasn't doing it for them. I was preparing the stage. You don't perform a reclamation in chaos. You present it, like a painting, like a verdict. By nightfall, the house was still, quiet, waiting. I sat on the porch with a cup of tea and watched the sun lower behind the fence Ryan never repaired. The porch light clicked on behind me, casting just enough glow to catch the glint of the camera's lens by the door. Gloria called just after 9. "You ready?" "I've been ready," I said. There was a pause on the line, then she whispered, "Make it count." And I would, because this wasn't about teaching them a lesson. Not anymore. This was about showing them what it looks like when the woman you took for granted stops making space for your comfort. They never once thought I'd fight back. They thought kindness meant permission. They thought patience meant submission. But tomorrow, they'd walk through that door expecting cake and comfort. They came back just after noon. I was sitting on the couch, back straight, hands folded in my lap like I was waiting for a sermon to begin. The front door rattled. Once. Twice. Then I heard it. The key turning, the deadbolt stopping it cold. A pause. Then Ryan's voice, sharp with confusion. "What the hell?" I didn't move. He knocked. Once, then again, harder. "Mom, something's wrong with the lock." Serena's voice followed, nasally and irritated. "Did you forget the key? Are you serious right now?" Another rattle. Then a bang. Serena's palm hitting the door. "Open up! What's going on?" I stood slowly, walked to the door, not fast, not flustered. I wanted every second to weigh something. I unlocked the top latch, cracked the door open just wide enough to see their faces. Ryan's eyebrows furrowed. "What's going on? Why did you change the locks?" Behind him, Serena stood in designer sunglasses and a new tan, holding her phone like a weapon, already filming. I looked at both of them, calm, even. Then I said, "You don't live here anymore." Ryan blinked. "What?" Serena scoffed. "Excuse me." I opened the door a few more inches, just enough for them to see behind me. The house was spotless. The dining table, cake in the center, lemon, a single lit candle flickering beside it. The fireplace, framed deed glowing red in the afternoon light. And on the entry table, my phone. Recording. I said. I repeated, slowly this time. "You don't live here anymore." Ryan laughed, like it was a misunderstanding. "Mom, stop. What is this? Some kind of joke? Did Serena say something?" "We'll talk." "I heard you," I cut in. "That day in the kitchen. The walking ATM? The guilt trip piggy bank? I heard everything." His mouth opened, closed, opened again. Serena stepped forward. "Okay, wow, this is actually illegal. You can't just throw us out. We live here." We were gone for 3 days. I held up the eviction notice, folded once, taped neatly to the door. "Effective the moment you left." You're not tenants. You never paid rent. You lived here on my kindness, and now that kindness is gone." Ryan tried to push past me, and I stepped back just enough to let him see the security camera above the door. "Don't," I warned. "You touch me, I press charges." His jaw clenched. "You can't do this." "I did do it," I said. "Everything filed. Legally. This is my house, Ryan. Always was. You were never entitled to it. I gave you room. I gave you food. I gave you everything." He looked down at the cake, then up at me. "So what? This is your big scene?" "No," I said softly. "This is your moment of realization." Serena's voice cracked, then, high and shrill. "Do you even hear yourself? After everything she paid for, you owe us." That's when I opened the door fully. I stepped aside, let the camera see my face, and I said, loud and clear, "I owe you nothing. You stole time. You stole space. But you can't steal dignity. And that's what I'm taking back." Then I did something they didn't expect. I smiled. Not with joy, not with spite, but with finality. And then I closed the door. Slow, quiet, firm. Behind me, the candle flickered on the lemon cake, and I didn't even glance back. The pounding started almost immediately. Fists on the door. Serena, screeching like a banshee. Ryan shouting my name like it still had any power. I didn't flinch. I turned off the camera, saved the video to the cloud, to a hard drive, to 3 different folders. I wasn't playing anymore. They kept shouting. Threats this time. "You'll regret this. We'll take you to court. This is elder abuse." I almost laughed at that last one. I opened the door again. Not wide, just enough for my voice to slip through like a knife. "You want court?" I said calmly. "Take me. But first, tell your lawyer how you haven't paid a dime in rent for 2 years. Tell them how you took $30,000 of my retirement money and never paid me back. Tell them how you mocked me in my own home, and I still fed you, bathed your dog, cleaned your messes." Ryan stepped forward, red-faced, hands clenched. "You don't have proof." I reached behind the entry table and pulled out a manila envelope. "Here's a copy of the deed. In my name. Dated, stamped, unchanged." I handed it through the crack. He didn't take it at first, just stared at it like it was poison. Serena was filming again. "We'll show the world what you've done." "Go ahead," I said. "You want to go viral? Let's show them a grown man being evicted by his 70-year-old mother, who paid his debts and housed his wife, and never once asked for rent." Ryan finally snatched the envelope and flipped through the pages. His face changed, pale, mouth opening slightly. It was real, all of it. And then I said the one sentence I'd been carrying like a stone in my chest. "I paid your debt. This is my house." Serena's voice turned cold, flat. "This is ridiculous." "No," I said. "What's ridiculous is thinking love means ownership. That guilt is currency. That you could shame me into silence while you planned a life built on the ashes of mine." She rolled her eyes and hissed, "You're being vindictive." I raised my eyebrows. "I'm being awake." Ryan looked at me like he was seeing me for the first time, not as a backup plan, not as a walking bank account, but as something dangerous. And he was right to be afraid. Because I wasn't doing this to hurt them. I was doing this to heal me. They'd had every chance to stop, to see me, to change. And instead, they mocked, laughed, planned renovations while I packed my memories into boxes. Ryan opened his mouth again, but I held up my hand. "No more words," I said. "You can send a moving service to pick up your things from the garage. I won't be here. But the house will be locked, the cameras will be on, and the police will be on call." He stepped back. Serena grabbed his arm. "We'll sue." "Do it," I said. "You'll lose." Then I closed the door, and this time I locked it with a new key, one they'd never touch. Inside, the house felt different, not empty, not bitter, just clean. The lemon cake sat untouched on the table. a gift, a boundary, a symbol, and maybe a warning. By the end of the week, the neighborhood knew. You can't drop an eviction, a shouting match, and an invoice in the middle of a suburban cul-de-sac without drawing eyes behind curtains. People noticed. People asked. And Ryan, he talked. At first, I thought he'd go quiet, that he'd pretend it didn't happen. But no. He ran his mouth like a man drowning in his own ego, gasping for someone to pull him back to shore. She kicked us out, I overheard him say at the pharmacy, 2 aisles over. After everything we did for her. I didn't interrupt. I just waited until he turned the corner and saw me standing there, bottle of Tylenol in my hand, sunglasses on, not even blinking. He didn't say a word. The
Just
ones who
turned
used to
and
chat
left
with
his
him
basket.
during his smoke breaks.
After that, things
Gone
started to
quiet.
unravel for him.
The old man across the
neighbors
street
didn't look
who
at him
loaned
the
him
same.
power tools, suddenly too busy. People weren't angry, exactly. Just disappointed. No one likes a grown man who mooches off his mother and calls it generosity. And Serena? She didn't last long after that. 2 weeks, maybe 3. I got the postcard in early spring. Plain white, no return address. 1 line, slanted and sharp. You were right. I'm sorry. No name, no warmth, just that. I stared at it for a long time, thought about tossing it. But I kept it. Not for sentiment, but as proof. Not that she was sorry, but that they knew. They knew what they lost. And not because of the house. Because I said no. Ryan called once after that. Blocked number. Left a message that started with, "Mom, listen," and ended with a sigh heavy enough to almost sound like regret. I deleted it before he could finish. Because I didn't need apologies wrapped in confusion. I didn't need him to feel bad. I needed him gone. And he was. The garage was empty now. The guest room smelled like lavender again. The curtains hung straight. The air was clear, and my name, Dorothy Mae Jensen, stood alone on every bill, every title, every inch of property. It was peaceful. Sometimes people ask if I miss him. And the truth is, I miss the boy I raised, the one who brought me dandelions and said they were flowers, the one who stayed up late practicing his spelling words, the one who kissed my cheek before school and told me I was his best friend. But that boy left a long time ago. What was left behind wasn't love. It was habit, obligation, greed disguised as closeness. And I've learned, being alone is better than being used.